Welcome back to another episode of Bucks Latest presented by Fan Arch. As always, I'm your host, Dean Simon, and before we get into everything, please make sure to leave a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe. We are not on the road to 1,000 subscribers anymore. We crossed that threshold, now on the road to 2,000. So if you'd like to join along on that journey, press that big red button below. Also, don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss out on future episodes. All right, I'm feeling like Jason Tatum right now because I just want to continuously scream, "We did it! We made it! We are here! The NBA preseason is about to get going for the Milwaukee Bucks, and you'll be seeing this before the game actually tips off later on Monday night. But the Milwaukee Bucks will start their season against the Miami Heat in Miami. So I'm just super excited to actually get things going, to review games and do that consistently throughout the entire season. Of course, I started taking this on in like basically the beginning of the offseason, but lucky for me, there was a good amount to talk about with the whole Giannis trade saga, waving and stretching Damian Lillard, bringing in Miles Turner. It was actually one of the Bucks' more, um, not necessarily like impressed, but just one of the craziest off seasons from a Milwaukee Bucks perspective that we've seen in recent years. So it was really cool to get that experience to start in the offseason and now make it to the point where we're going to cover actual games on this channel and really dive deep into the on-court product. So I'm very excited to do that. And the first chance that we'll be getting to do that will be against the Heat. With I don't know if all the stars will necessarily be playing because, like the Lakers did just this past night against the Warriors, they sat out LeBron, Luca, Austin Reeves, Marcus Smart, Adu Thero, their best player. So there was a lot of guys, that chose to take those kinds of games off. I don't know how much the Bucks will hold certain guys back. You'll likely see every guy that's that you expect to see on the floor make either their Bucks debuts, like Miles Turner will be, or you'll see Giannis back and ready to go after it again and try to win another title. I just cannot believe that we are finally back and ready to review actual games. So excited to do that for everybody. But anyways, going to talk about Kevin Porter Jr. today and some recent quotes that he gave during an interview, basically saying that he loves what the Milwaukee Bucks have going on again in terms of the on-court product, and that there's so much shooting surrounding him, and that he is able to benefit off of the Bucks drive and kick kind of style, and that coming over from the Clippers at the trade deadline, by the way, which is a move that Giannis himself said was maybe the steal, like that KPJ was the steal of the trade deadline. But regardless of that, Kevin Porter Jr. basically said that he loves Bucks culture. He loves how he's able to manage things on the court and continually develop as a passer. And we're only going to see that kind of increase tenfold coming into this year because you just number one, you love to see this kind of attitude coming from the guy that's going to be your starting point guard, and a guy that, as I've talked about in a previous episode or two, has worn so many different hats in terms of his hierarchy within the lineup in different positions that he's already been in his career, even though he's still very young. That he went from a guy who was very heavily relied upon to contribute to his team's offense for the Houston Rockets for a good while, looked at as a top option on an NBA team for, again, like a good season, 2 seasons, then going to kind of the bottom of the barrel where he's fighting for a roster spot in the NBA. He was out of the NBA for a short amount of time, gets back in and doesn't really do much with the Clippers, but then finds a way to get traded to the Bucks. And then once he gets there, he starts performing very, very positively and actually producing at a good rate. And going into this year as the Bucks' full-time starting point guard, you just love to see that a guy that's already gained so much experience and been in so many different positions throughout his NBA career, he's loving what he's seeing so far. And I talked about it a little bit in previous episodes too, especially um kind of the beginning of the offseason, like right after the playoffs concluded, that Kevin Porter Jr. throughout the postseason was really, really impressing me specifically as a passer, as a playmaker. And it was just his pick and roll ball handling, his, just noticing that certain guys like to get into certain spots, and he was hitting open three-point shooters. And what I really loved is that he wasn't turning the ball over very much. It was, I think, 5.2 assists per game in the playoffs, something like that, but only a little over one turnover a game. It was just a fantastic assist to turnover ratio. He was scoring efficiently, and he was using, I love how he's able to kind of leverage his skill set in a way where he uses the threat. He's, I don't want to make any crazy assumptions here, but in a similar way to like a guy like Luka Doncic, obviously on a much lesser level, KPJ is a guy that can use the threat of his passing to open up windows for himself to take a nice step back jumper in the mid range. And then he uses the threat of his scoring, maybe after a play like that happens, to get a guy open rolling towards the basket or to hit a guy like AJ Green in the corner for a three. He just, you know what I mean? That he uses the threat, or he makes you intimidated because of his pull-up game and getting all the way to the basket and finishing with ease, that it opens up things for his teammates around him. And of course it helps that he can score from all areas of the floor, so that it just further opens things up for the rest of the group. So just based on how KPJ is coming into the season, he's coming in, feeling fulfilled, feeling energized, and obviously loving everything that the Milwaukee Bucks have going on. It's just such a positive vibe right now, and I really hope that this sticks, past the first preseason game, getting into the regular season, and that everybody's just on, like riding a certain high, and that there's just a general good feeling around this team, because guys like KPJ and Miles Turner and Bobby Portis and Giannis. All of these guys have really, really bought into this team. And of course, with a guy like Giannis, he's just gonna really do that automatically if the Bucks are in a good spot to win. But all of these guys feel great about this team, feel great about the talent that's surrounding them. And it's kind of like, every guy on this team is looking out for the guy next to him, and is very happy about the guy next to him being there. So just very positive vibes going into this year, and I'm really, really appreciating that from the group. Speaking of Giannis and how he views this team, he has also said himself on numerous occasions and numerous kind of little short interviews, like around media day and going into training camp, as he now just rejoined the team after having COVID, that while he did have COVID, he was kind of, you know, relishing the opportunity, kind of missing out, or, having FOMO a little bit with regard to not being there even earlier to kind of get to know his team and build that kind of chemistry earlier on. But Giannis kind of doubled down on his comments about the team recently, saying that, obviously they have so much shooting, more shooting than they've ever had before. And again, even though they just led the league in 3-point percentage as a team, that obviously they're going to get the attempts up, and that's going to be a product of pushing the ball out on the break more often. But Giannis really, really believes in this team, and this is just, it's so fun to like to have these kinds of things pan out right in front of you, where even though this is a Milwaukee Bucks team that is decidedly, a little bit weaker than in previous years, of course, than in, previous years of actual real championship contention year in and year out. Um, this is a team that Giannis is very proud of, and that the coaching staff is very proud of, and the front office is very proud of. And considering the situation that the Bucks were in to begin the offseason, this is, the final finished product of this roster is one that you can be proud of. The John Horst was able to do a lot with the situation that he was given, with Damian Lillard not being available for the entire season. But that's a whole entire separate can of worms. Giannis is only focused, and his only focus ever has been on winning a title. Giannis is still convinced that, even with this kind of group around him, that he can compete for a title, and that this Milwaukee Bucks team can go far. And something that I love about this team specifically, and I feel like it's kind of, I haven't really seen this anywhere, it's that this group of guys specifically, like these individuals, they have great backstories, and I feel like it's kind of a point in time where all of these different guys at really different but interesting points of their careers are coming together for this one common goal. And obviously all 30 NBA teams are trying to win a championship, but all of these guys kind of have their like little separate motivations as to why they'd want to compete for a title, why they'd want to show that they can be a winner at the highest level. When you look at guys like, even a guy like Torian Prince, let's say, who was a part of that amazing Atlanta Hawks team that was really the poster boy, or kind of the staple um, for really big pretender teams. Like, how there's contenders and pretenders, that like the 2015 Atlanta Hawks were huge pretenders, and that maybe that's always been a chip on his shoulder for a good while, that ever since playing on a team like that, kind of getting towards the top of the conference and then just flattening out in the playoffs, maybe he wants to compete for a title. And obviously a guy like Giannis and a guy like Bobby Portis are gonna want to try and get back to the mountaintop after already winning one. A guy like KPJ, like we said before, has bounced around the league and been in so many different situations. Now he has a real concrete opportunity to win. A guy like Gary Trent Jr., who we've covered in recent episodes, where the Toronto Raptors, he was there for a couple of years. He put up like 17, 18 points a game in a given season. And then they kind of just left him on the side of the road and didn't really care. And now he's on the Bucks and he's trying to prove to, his doubters, his naysayers, that he is worth something on an NBA team, on a good NBA team, that he can win. Um, and probably the biggest one of all is Miles Turner coming off of a loss in Game 7 of the NBA Finals in the most gut wrenching form after Tyrese Halliburton went down, and getting so close to raising the Larry O'Brien Trophy and pulling off one of the most incredible playoff runs in NBA history. His hunger, his itch to actually raise that Larry OB has got to be higher than ever. So coming into this year, there's so many different guys with such high motivations to be able to want to be in that position to try and win a championship. So that's just another little interesting tidbit about this team that I feel like can really have an impact on certain guys mentally. Just kind of having it in the back of their heads that, there's this underlying reason. It's kind of like my villain origin story, that this is the reason why I want to be able to win this championship and prove it to these people, or that I've been hit with like some kind of obstacle in my career and I want to get over that and get over the hump and win a title. There's just a lot of different motivations for certain guys to win a championship. Last thing I want to talk about is that, number one, isn't it crazy that Russell Westbrook is still not on an NBA team? Russell Westbrook has not signed even a training camp, like an Exhibit 9, Exhibit 10 deal with an NBA team going into this year. And I think this would have been his 18th season, I'm pretty sure, after being the sixth man in Denver, which I want to say before we even get into what his potential fit would have been on the Milwaukee Bucks, that the season he just had for the Denver Nuggets wasn't anything to scoff at. He was very, very productive, maybe not as efficient as you would like, maybe a little more turnover prone than you would like, but that is Russell Westbrook. That's what he has kind of built his brand on. He's going 100 miles an hour at any given moment, whether it's, to a fault, whether it's good or bad for him. So that's just who he is. But he was productive enough to where I wouldn't have thought it was crazy that he could be like a sixth man of the year candidate, that he was one of the most impactful bench pieces on a contending team in the NBA this past year, and he almost helped the Denver Nuggets get to the conference finals, and maybe even the finals, like, because really that series, the Nuggets and the Thunder, that probably was the championship in the Western Conference. I feel like anybody that came out of that series was probably going to beat the Timberwolves and then go on to win the NBA title against anybody that was coming out of the East. But this is all to say that it's astonishing Russell Westbrook is on the open market still, but I'm not taking him. If I'm the Milwaukee Bucks, I'm saying thank you, but no. I'm respectfully declining because, number one, there's just not the space. We've already been over that the Bucks have these 21 guys that they're still trying to sift through and see who's actually going to make this roster that's going to stand out. And Russ just, he doesn't really fit in the mix. And then also because the point guard rotation, even though some may view that it could be astronomically better than what it is, it's filled out. We kind of have this system in mind where it's going to be Kevin Porter Jr., it's going to be Cole Anthony, and Ryan Rollins is probably going to fill in at certain spots as the tertiary point guard, or as a backup tertiary shooting guard. He's kind of be going to be all around the place, and especially if, let's say, knock on wood, there's an injury to KPJ or Cole Anthony, then Ryan Rollins is going to get that kind of push. So we just have the general idea of the point guard rotation. And at this point, bringing in Russ just would completely wreck everything. Maybe if this was a couple of months ago and we had no idea that Cole Anthony, like, or if he was going to be on this team, then maybe I would suggest bringing in Russ to back up KPJ. But that obviously that's not the case, and those spots are filled. So it would have been something though, because course, neither of them can shoot, but Russ and Giannis, just the prospect of putting them together and having them get out on the break and run in the open floor, that would be a nightmare to defend, even at Russ's age right now. That would be an absolute nightmare. But again, in terms of the efficiency, and the Bucks are trying to really emphasize 3-point shooting and 3-point productivity, it just would not be a very great fit. So, by the way, this was Kendrick Perkins of ESPN that said this, and I really just is it bad of me to say that I don't know what Kendrick Perkins is doing on ESPN still? It feels like he doesn't really add much of value, and that he's kind of just there to make these crazy assumptions, take on the Stephen A. Smith kind of role with just from a former player perspective. But that's completely separate. Again, can of worms for another day. But anyways, that'll be it for me today. Thank you very much for tuning into another episode of Bucks Latest presented by Fan Arch. Again, I've been Dean Simon, and before you go, make sure to leave a like, leave a comment down below, tell me what you think of everything, and subscribe. Turn on the post notifications so you don't miss future episodes. And yeah, I'll be on. But the next time I see you, I'll be talking about a basketball game that the Milwaukee Bucks have played, and getting down to it. Even though it's the first outing of the preseason, it doesn't matter to me. It's like the playoffs right now because I'm just so excited to be back. All right, see you guys in the next one. Go Bucks.